President Biden welcomes Republican House Speaker Kevin McCarthy to the White House today for a highly anticipated one-on-one meeting focusing on the debt ceiling. Both sides have drawn hard lines on spending cuts, though. The U.S. hit its debt limit last month, and officials have until at least early June to find an agreement. Weijia Jiang joins us now from the White House to discuss. Early June because, the money doesn't run out per se, but the Fed said they will be taking extraordinary measures to make sure that all the bills are paid. So that being said, ahead of the talks today, both sides are saying they have non-negotiables. They're digging in their heels, but clearly they are negotiating something or other. So give us some insight about, what's on the agenda for these talks.
Well, the White House would disagree with that, Anne Marie. They would say that, look, he is the House Speaker. This is the first time that these two leaders are meeting since Kevin McCarthy ascended to that role. And certainly whether there was a debt ceiling debate or not, they would have to meet to hash out their agendas, to find where they might be able to find compromise, just as a point of respect to have the House Speaker here at the White House. But to your point, Anne Marie, they do certainly have a big task ahead of them. The White House is also making a really big point to say that this is not a meeting about the debt ceiling. This is a meeting about a wide range of issues. From the very beginning, they have said, McCarthy wants to characterize this meeting as all about the debt ceiling, but that is not the case. However, that said, the president's advisor on the National Economic Council, the head of that, Brian Deese, and the budget director, Weijia Jiang, released a memo. CBS News got a copy of it, and it is quite lengthy for a meeting that is not about the debt ceiling. And in it, it lays out the two most important questions that President Biden wants to have answered, and that is whether McCarthy will agree to not allow the country default on its debt. And number two, when are Republicans going to release their budget? Because obviously we know that McCarthy and Republicans are saying that it's, too much spending, that something has to go, that, in order to raise the debt ceiling, they have to be more fiscally responsible. But what does that look like? That is a big black box that we don't know. The White House says, is it cutting benefits to Americans that they rely on every day? Social Security, Medicaid, is that it? Is that, the only way forward? And so far, we don't know, Anne Marie. So that's one thing that they have to try to hash out, among many others, because as you also mentioned, both sides are not blinking at this point in terms of what they're willing to give. And to be clear, the president's position is he will not negotiate. He will not cut a deal in order to raise the debt ceiling.
So this is really interesting. Clearly, there are the issues that the country's facing, and then there's sort of the impression, the politics, what these two men are trying to project. For Kevin McCarthy, it's his first sort of visit up to the White House since becoming the Speaker. Can you talk to me a little bit about why both sides are trying to project sort of very different, or what's the word I'm looking for? They're not different. They're projecting sort of the same image, that they're both sort of tough guys that aren't going to budge. Why are they doing that? What's the benefit of that?
Well, Speaker McCarthy is in this position, as you very well remember, because he cut many backroom deals with members of his own party. It was very difficult for him to actually get the number of votes, 218, to become Speaker of the House, because the party is so divided. And so if you have hardline conservatives who are insisting that, they don't raise the debt ceiling, that government is far too big and spending far too much, it's hard to say what McCarthy agreed to with regard to them. And also, they could block any compromise that does surface out of talks. And so I think McCarthy is in a tricky position because he has to portray that he is honoring all those deals, all those promises that he made, many of which we don't even know the details of. On the other hand, the president, he learned from having gone through this before. Back in 2011, when he was vice president, Kevin McCarthy was actually number 3 in the House. They've been through this before. The country has been close to a default before, and at that time, then Vice President Biden spent hours trying to hammer out a deal, and it didn't work. I mean, Republicans, in the words of former Obama administration officials, did not make good on their promise, and the country's credit suffered, the markets suffered, and they were rattled, even though they were able to ultimately come to a deal. So the president promised then that never again would they negotiate on something that should be, in their view, so basic, which is making sure the U.S. can be good on its loans.
All right, Weijia, let's hope the talks go well. Thank you very much.
Sure.